Titles in One Piece mean everything and nothing at the same time. See, as with all aspects of life, this is a complex subject no matter how much the internet polarizes it. So if you're one of those people who thinks Oda just says shit, or you think all titles are factual, I'm here to prove you wrong. Then hopefully by the end of the video, you'll realize Oda is extremely keen when it comes to his statements, giving you more appreciation for the story.
It's an honor to be in bro presence, man. Bro, real nigga, real genuine, man. Nigga certified.
In a narrative sense, the author uses titles such as World's Strongest masterfully, an easy, quick way to hype up a person, working every time. This is due to Oda always having his characters live up to these titles regardless of whether they are factual. Now the real dispute starts. In a practical sense, the validity of titles is ripe for discussion, because if Whoopslap is the world's strongest god, he has the best agenda. That's where that sentence ends and the debate begins. Obviously, the culprits I'll be analyzing first are Dracula Mihawk and Edward Newgate, because their titles have dual purpose. World's Strongest Swordsman and World's Strongest Man are not only real epithets the One Piece world uses, but can also be read as declarative statements, as in, the omnipotent narrator is telling us they are the greatest. If this seems like some arbitrary difference I'm making up to claim an agenda, remember how Oda has used the narrator/info boxes in the past. He has the narrator tell us how Luffy was inspired by Shanks to give Kaido stats to foreshadow future events. He has text boxes reveal bounties, Shaki's true identity, and that Rocks is Blackbeard's father. As you can see, it's a real trope the author uses to convey factual information, which is backed up even more when we analyze Whitebeard and Mihawk. Neither character makes any sense if these titles aren't true. If Whitebeard was just weaker than all the other Yonko, then that means he wasn't the closest to the throne, not the king of his era, basically a complete fraud. Some really use this to say he was hiding from the other emperors, even though it's implied to be the other way around, being the antithesis of his character. It doesn't take more than one glance with observation haki to know someone's power level as well. It's not like all the other factions who have spies were misinformed. All the same for Mihawk. If he isn't the strongest swordsman, it invalidates Zoro's entire character, which is why intelligent Shanks fans like to say he's not a swordsman in order to not contradict the title. A different topic though. So what about practically? Are Mihawk and Whitebeard for real the greatest? Well, yeah, there's nothing any character has shown contradicting these claims, because you could just say these two are better than that. Then when you say such, people will pull out Marineford arguments, aka Neanderthal arguments, because despite this arc being published 15 years ago, people still take it at complete face value. Oh, how was Whitebeard the strongest if he said he wasn't in Marineford? Even though Marco fully explains how his sickness deteriorated him. In fact, Squard stabbing Newgate is a direct contrast to when Ace was repelled by Whitebeard in his sleep, aka when he was medicated and the narrator considered him the best. Of course, hindsight tells us the captain couldn't use Conqueror's haki like he did with Shanks, meaning he couldn't use advanced Conquerors. So Whitebeard was at least a whole blitz difference slower than at his peak. Did you see Mihawk in Marineford though? Aren't commanders stronger than him? Look, these arguments for Mihawk are all extremely bad faith. It's why they become more of a meme than an actual stance. Though if you do engage with them, they are easily debunked. For example, if Mihawk was going all out to kill Luffy, which he never said, then how did he adjust from a power level of barely touching pre-time skip Gear 2 to matching one of Whitebeard's top commanders? See how stupid that is? All of the Marineford shit is the same level as saying, Garp couldn't catch the Straw Hats, he's probably not that tough, right? As if we just read Enies Lobby. So as we can tell, Mihawk/Whitebeard's titles are concrete statements from Oda himself, and not just what the One Piece world thinks. To prove this even harder, we can look at the other labels in the series. These others are often used as debunks to what I just explained. However, when you can actually tell the difference, the series becomes a lot more simple. It's where people can start to appreciate Oda's attention to detail if we analyze the story correctly. Let's start with the biggest argument, Kaido. The King of the Beasts is said to be the strongest creature alive. Clearly, it contradicts Whitebeard's title. Many get into the weeds of whether humans are creatures or what the narrator really meant, but the simple answer has been staring us in the face since Kaido's introduction. I mean, I literally just said it. Oda never stated Kaido was the most powerful. He said other people said that. It is as simple as his title being a rumor, not an official fact. Again, if this seems like some pointless difference I'm making up, consider the following. A, why didn't he write it like this or this? B, remember how Oda has used such wording before. Here's a statement for Loki, one about Kuma, another for the Scabbards, so on and so forth. They aren't facts, but an easy way to convey how the One Piece world views a person. Also, I find it hilarious how fans take the "always bet on Kaido" statement as obvious rumor, but 2 boxes later, when the narrator says the same shit, oh, what does it mean? Kaido's title was false. Doesn't mean he's a fraud, because unlike Whitebeard, he was never touted as the king of the seas, nor was it considered his era. Strongest creature has nothing to do with his narrative besides Kaido himself believing it, which we don't even know if he did while Whitebeard was alive. As said earlier, the epithet was supposed to hype up his power. The Yonko lived up to it regardless. Also, if you're gonna bring up the Ace novel, get eviscerated. See how simple that was? Never needed to define what a creature is or question the narrator. No, it's just about wording. Want another example? Look no further than the Admirals. In World, these guys have the label of strongest military force. Then like Whitebeard or Mihawk, the narrator eventually states such directly, meaning all the Admirals, or at least the OGs, are greater than Old Garp and Sengoku. Those two should be relative to Old Whitebeard, putting them on the same tier as the Yonko. Some even use it to say they're greater than Roger, which, considering the scaling, is not too far-fetched.
What the hell are you guys doing?
If you read the series in English, that is a mistranslation. In the original Japanese text, Saiko Senyoku is stated in quotes, meaning the narrator is simply quoting their title like they did for Kaido. Considering everything we see from the Admirals, the author used these quotations perfectly, because he proceeds to show the greatest fighters in the Navy go equal with a weakened Yonko and get terrified by the aura of a full power one. I know how polarized the debate is. I'm not saying the Admirals are fodder. Here's 30 minutes of me claiming otherwise. Same thing for Kaido. I'm simply recognizing how these titles aren't concrete. Yes, it's due to small details, but look at what series we're dealing with. People get hyped about how meticulous Oda is with the story, yet don't apply that to power scaling. Someone please mention Crocodile, I fucking dare you. Anyways, on to the God King. Buggy is another cited example of titles not being correct. However, understand this. The name of Yonko is not just an epithet or rumor. It is granted by the public, but also a rank/position used by official organizations. The Marines can't interfere with Blackbeard because he's a Yonko. Cypherpole needs clearance to fight a Yonko. The balance of power is maintained because of the threat of the Yonko. So when the narrator says Yonko Buggy, that is true. They don't need to say said to be, because that is his position. In fact, this Yonko Buggy argument is off topic because you're not even debating whether the narrator is correct, you're debating if he deserves it, which he does, considering Emperor status has nothing to do with strength, represented in the fact Mihawk's bounty is higher than his. And if you're gonna keep arguing with that, go ahead, but it's a separate discussion. Now that we have a better understanding of how to analyze titles, I'll rapid fire a few more examples. Boa is known as the most beautiful woman. As you can tell from the wording, it is not an objective fact, especially since we have characters who disagree with that. Katarina Devon was never called the most dangerous woman. Like Kaido, people use her to say, how are titles correct if she's not stronger than Big Mom? But no. She is said to be one of the most dangerous criminals from Impel Down, and she is a woman. The fandom played a huge game of telephone, which morphed into Devon being called the most dangerous woman in history. Oh my fucking god. Regardless, the title would be a rumor anyway. Dragon as the world's worst criminal is not an objective fact and could literally mean anything. Finally, Garp was never stated to be the strongest Marine. Fans have just been speculating that for years, their echoes turning into headcanon. With that, there isn't much more to speak on. Again, when you use this method of reasoning, most labels in One Piece are hearsay. It's not until we get to Whitebeard and Mihawk things change. It makes sense Oda declared them to be different, as it's the entire point of their characters. As always, he tries to muddy the waters by making some epithets contradict, but at the end of the day, he knows what he's doing. All it takes is simple knowledge of grammar and context to understand why titles mean everything and nothing.